Welcome to the Choralosophy Podcast. I'm Chris Muntz, episode 23, Words, Music, and Art with Charles Anthony Silvestri. This is a choir nerd heaven episode, so get ready, because I've got the master himself, Charles Anthony Silvestri, one of the most well-known lyricists in the choral world, on the show to talk about the artistic process of creating new art when music and words fuse, when music and prose, when music and poetry fuse. So I pick his brain a little bit about how he does what he does and how it all started. This episode won't need a whole lot of introduction. It's not going to need a whole lot of lead-in, so I'm just going to dive right into it. We're just excited for you to get a chance to hear from Tony. But before we do, want to make sure I give a shout out to the episode sponsors. We are really excited at the Choralosophy Podcast to be introducing this week a teaser for who our new sponsor is. We're going to have grown now over the course of 6 months to 4 affiliates on the show. Should point out to you right off the bat that in case you don't know how advertising typically works in a podcast, I saw somebody write, this is not a criticism at all, it just kind of explains a misconception that this show is corporate sponsored. I saw someone write that. It's actually not true. I'm a completely independent entity, and all of the advertisers that you hear talked about on this show are what are called in the podcast biz affiliates, which means that they don't pay me anything. I don't get paid a single dollar unless you use the promo code, which for all of these sponsors of these affiliates is Choralosophy. When you check out with their product, and again, I said this on the early episodes, but we have a lot of new folks joining the show in the last few weeks. I said this from the very beginning. I will only affiliate on this show with products that help a choral director do what I think choral directors should be doing, and they're products that I use. So that disclaimer out of the way, wanted to let you know that we have a 4th affiliate on the show. And I'm not going to tell you everything about this affiliate yet because I'm saving that for an episode that is coming up. I am getting set to record an episode with Amanda Quist. She is newly down in Miami as the choral director of choral activities there, but was formerly of Westminster Choir College. And she's done some pretty amazing research into the science of the vowel and whether or not we can define objectively what a vowel is and what its anatomy is in a lot of ways. And there is a software that I use in my classroom called Voce Vista. And it is an overtone analyzer specifically designed for singers. And in my classroom, our kids see in objective terms, not based on my opinion or what I was taught by my choir teacher in high school or college, but they see in objective terms what an ah vowel is or what an o vowel is. They can see it on the screen, they can see the overtones, and in the next episode with Dr. Quist, I am also going to demonstrate how I use that product in class, so stay tuned for that. Officially, we agreed to partner on the Choralosophy Podcast with Voce Vista, but I'm not quite ready to show you all and explain to you all how that works. It's a pretty revolutionary product, and I'm excited to tell you about it. Of course, we also have had since the very beginning RyanMain.com and SightReadingFactory.com. They are affiliates of the show, and I encourage you to check out their products. Of course, Sight Reading Factory, it's not too late to get those memberships going for the year and for your students. You can enter Choralosophy at checkout on Sight Reading Factory to get that 10% discount, as well as on RyanMain.com's website. On Ryan Main's website, you can get a site license for any of his awesome pieces there, and you can print as many copies as you want forever, and also get a 10% discount as a listener to this show. And finally, our other most recent affiliate, I've been really excited to join forces with, which is Graphite Publishing. That is a pretty diverse group of musical voices that are being published over there at Graphite, in that they write for all levels, and you can even sort on their website by level, by difficulty level. You can sort by a cappella versus accompanied. You can sort by accompanied but with a solo instrument. Like, there's just all kinds of ways. And I use it when I'm up a creek in the last minute because I didn't program on time, and I need something right now. And I need something that's of high quality that the kids are just going to love. And I of course, I don't want to say that I always procrastinate, because I don't. But if I need something quick, that's always my first go-to. And I encourage you to check them out. And of course, if you choose something, enter that promo code at checkout. Without any further ado, here comes Charles Anthony Silvestri. I'm here with Charles Anthony Silvestri, who many of you will know from his beautiful lyrics that he has set to some of our favorite choral works and I'm excited to talk to him about the process and kind of pick his brain on what goes into the creation of art that has music with it. And it's,
Mm,
of course, for us choir nerds, that's what it's all about for us. So
that's
welcome,
right.
Tony.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here.
What I'd like us to do first, I think, as we mentioned before we started, most of the audience probably knows who you are. In that they have done some of your works before. They have
Sure.
done some a piece, probably an Eric Whitacre piece.
Right.
What we really want to know probably is what is the origin story, you might say, of
Uh-huh.
Tony Silvestri? What is your background, maybe even in a non-choir context? What is
Sure, sure. Well, my day job, I'm a professor of ancient history at Washburn University in Topeka. So all my degrees are in history, and I taught high school in Los Angeles for 15 years, and then when I moved to Kansas, I began teaching at the university, and so that's sort of been the thrust of my career, the professional side of my career. This whole lyrics thing is a side gig. Um, that kind of happened by mistake, really, or just by serendipity, I would say. I was in choir in college at Loyola Marymount. I studied and sang with Paul Salamunovich there um, for all of my undergrad years and for several years after I graduated as well. Because if you can sing for Paul, you know, it was a wonderful thing, and I wanted to keep doing it. But there was a point at which, during my graduate work at USC, that I needed to take a break. I was out of money and I was studying for my qualifying exams, and I needed to get a start on my dissertation as well. And so I left Los Angeles and came back to Las Vegas, where I grew up, and I lived with my mom and dad for a year. But you can't just not be in choir. So I went to UNLV and I introduced myself to David Weiler, who's the director there, and told him a little bit about my experience as a singer, and sang "My Country 'Tis of Thee" or "Happy Birthday" or something for him. And he put me in one of the ensembles, the sort of chamber choir, I think. And Eric Whitacre was in that choir as an undergrad, and the two of us hit it off. We became best friends and brothers. That was almost 30 years ago now, and this was before he even wrote a single note of music, um, and so we were friends before he was a composer. And then my job as a lyricist began when Eric asked me to write some texts for him. Those three early works, the first three things I ever wrote were Lux Arumque and Leonardo Dreams of His Flying Machine and Sleep. And they became pretty popular, and then other composers began to seek me out. And before I knew it, I was a lyricist, and I've been a lyricist now for 20 years for, I think, 50 some odd composers around the
wow?
world.
So that's interesting because I always assumed, just kind of looking at it from the outside, that the relationship with Eric Whitacre came from you being a lyricist.
No.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, he trusted me with a project. Lux Arumque was our first collaboration, and it was basically just a translation exercise. He had a small English poem, a little nugget of a poem, and he wanted to set it in Latin. And so, as a classicist, I was able to render it in a kind of singable form of Latin. It was a fun little scholarly project, and it helped out my good friend. Um, and so I did it. I didn't really think of it as being a lyricist.
Right.
And then with Leonardo and Sleep, those were two more focused poetic uh, exercises. And I resisted. I really did. I wanted Eric to go with somebody else, especially for Leonardo Dreams of His Flying Machine. This was for the Brock Commission, the ACDA Brock
Hmm.
Commission. It was a huge deal early in his career. And he's like, "No, I want you to write it." And I kept saying, "I'm not a poet." And he said, "Shut up and write it." He really was a great advocate for me as a creative person, and so I really have Eric to thank for all these years and all the collaborations that I've done with so many people, the mountaintop experiences that I've had as a result of saying yes to that risk.
Wow. So did you have this is where I'm curious now, is in those early years of friendship and singing in choir and getting to know each other,
Yeah.
other than being a classicist, what was it, do you think, looking back on it, that made him think that you could be a
Huh.
poet?
Well, I suppose I've always been pretty careful with my words, and I'm a good writer. My academic writing and is pretty good, and all the stuff I do, my syllabi, my letters to my grandma, all that kind of stuff are very carefully constructed, and maybe that was something that he hooked on to. And just our conversations, we would have rambling philosophical, epic conversations that would go until 5 in the morning. Um, and so I think he was just familiar with who I was and what I believed and uh, how I put words together.
Okay.
Um, there was something else that I wanted to say too about that, and the thought was lost. The cat's trying to get into this room, and so
Yeah.
I was distracted by the cat.
It's understood. I've had episodes interrupted by my dog and by my children through the door. I record in a what used to be a guest bedroom in my house and is now becoming my studio, and so it's all there's always
Right,
something going
always
on.
something.
I understand. So once you once you stopped singing in choir,
Yeah.
at that point, were you uh, was that congruent with the time when you were starting to write these pieces with Eric, or was there a time ever when you were kind of not a choir person at all?
Well, no, I mean, I've always been in a choir, whether it's a
Okay.
church choir or a community choir or a university choir. When I first moved here to Lawrence, Kansas, same as I did in Las Vegas, I just went to KU and I introduced myself to the director there at the time, and I auditioned and I got into their early music ensemble because that's the kind of music that I love to sing, Renaissance music and Baroque music, early stuff. And so I joined their choir for a year and sang with them, and then joined a different church choir. And so I've always been a singer, and it's one of those things. It's how I pray. It's how I connect with spirit. It's how I reconnect with my own spirit. Um, it's important to me to sing in a group, and so I've never stopped really
Yeah.
singing.
That's interesting when you said that singing is how you pray.
Yeah,
I identify with that. I've always said that as I was the son of a church musician and myself a church musician for 20 years, and I was always the kid who didn't really resonate much. A little bit every once in a while, a sermon would kind of spark something in me, but
yeah,
I didn't really tune into a service until the music started. And
huh?
my mom used to say that about me even when I was 5.
Yeah,
There like if I was acting up in the audience or in the congregation, of course now I'm a performer, but if I
right.
was acting up in the congregation, she said it was because the music had stopped.
Yeah.
And that was something that I definitely that was how I connected emotionally as well. So and of course I've heard you sing. It's a lovely voice.
Well, thank you.
Yes,
I'm a little horrified by that, but
no, I was in the audience when you did the thing with Tracy Rezagy in Missouri.
oh yeah, yes,
Yeah, that
that
and
Irish song that I wrote.
yes, and that was one of your texts, right?
Yes, I wrote the text, and then I wrote it as a song. So I wrote the lyrics and the tune together, and then later orchestrated it or arranged it for men's chorus.
And who is the composer?
Me,
Oh, you also wrote
yeah,
the
I wrote
music,
the tune.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So how many choral compositions are under your belt now?
Well, maybe 3 or 4. I have
Okay.
one published, which was the sort of swap collaboration with Eric. He wrote the poem and I wrote the music, and this was sort of a terrifying change of role for each of us.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Um,
we were part
it,
of the consortium for that.
yeah, it's I'm pretty proud of it. When I hear it, I think, yeah, it kind of works as a piece.
Yeah.
Um, I was worried that that it would only sell because of the gimmick value of it, but I think all in all, I mean, if I do say so myself, I think it works as a choral piece.
Now was that one, the swap piece, was that your first attempt?
Very first thing that I ever wrote, yeah.
Okay.
And I've since done a couple of other little things. The music I have in my head is a kind of one part Tavener, one part Pert, um, one part Whitacre, and one part me.
Interesting.
It's kind of a neo medieval drony kind of thing. That's what I have in my head. And so a couple of the other pieces that I've written that haven't been performed yet um, have been like that. Uh,
Now, do you think that's connected to, I mean, I'm sure it is, but like, how would you describe the connection between that preference of music that you feel in
huh.
your head and your history buff,
Yeah.
self?
No, I think it's really informed by that. As a medievalist, I've always been fascinated by chant and by different uh, forms of medieval music, Byzantine music, Greek Orthodox and Russian Orthodox music as well. My really first church choir experience was in an Orthodox church, and I went just to check it out, and somebody in the choir recognized me from Loyola Marymount and grabbed me and pulled me up into the choir loft. And so my very first experiencing Orthodox liturgy was in the choir. And I just got hooked by that ancientness and by um, the sort of spiritual otherness of it. Um, and so I think all those parts of my background and my education and my interests ever since I was a kid have kind of informed that neo-medieval style.
Yeah, I think that I share that a lot. I believe early music has always been like if I could get a choral audience to just come all the time just for music before 1600,
Right.
um, that would probably be all of my concerts, but I
Yeah.
don't, obviously. Most people don't have those appetites.
Yeah.
But I think for me, one of the mystique elements of that is that at the time that music, the medieval period in particular, it's just a time when people believed that, I mean, if they had almost no access to science the way we think of it now,
Right. Right.
and to hear music through their ears would have been fascinating to
Huh.
me, at a time when they believed that the music had some kind of magical power in itself.
Right.
This
Well,
is why.
and then when you take that idea then and progress it through like the Ars Nova stuff that was going on at Notre Dame, the introduction of different polyphonic parts and things like that. I mean, people
Uh-huh.
must have lost their minds.
Oh yeah. I mean, we had people getting excommunicated because of the notes they wrote. Like if you write the wrong patterns of notes, you
Yeah.
could be going to hell.
Yeah.
And that's and that, but and we read about that stuff in our music history textbooks, and I think we look at it through our 21st century eyes,
R-
which is, oh, well, how dumb that was. But
Right.
what if you were hearing music
Right.
back then with that deeply held belief that the music you were hearing could either take you to the good place or the bad
Right.
place?
Well,
I,
and that's why I think we should have ensembles that offer people the opportunity um, to sing medieval music
mhm.
and Greek Orthodox stuff. There's something about droning and then singing a melody over top of a drone that sends you to a different place.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
it's really
well,
quite powerful.
I agree, and it's to our modern ears, it especially is transportative, and I'm not even
Yeah,
sure that that's a word,
yeah,
but yeah, I agree. So that makes a lot of sense then. Hearing uh, the couple pieces, I think the two of yours, you said there's only three or four,
yeah.
but I think I've then heard two, so I've heard half of your works. That must make me a super fan. I think that's what that is. So, all right. So we heard a little bit about this new budding interest of the writing the music, which is great.
Yeah,
Of course, most of us know you for your text. So let's
right.
talk about that a little bit. So
Sure.
what is your process, and or is it always the same? So take us through like the
Huh.
average composer contacts Tony Silvestri to write a
Right.
piece, and how does it all start?
Right. Well, we have a kind of businessy conversation, and then ultimately, once we're talking about the piece itself,
Hmm.
and it quite literally is as you describe it. The composer calls me and or emails me and says, "Hey, I want you to write a text." Sometimes the composer commissions me. Sometimes the choir that's commissioning the piece kicks in a little extra for me. Sometimes I'll do it as a favor, for somebody that I've worked with before or someone I really want to work with. Um, but yeah, we have. we have a kind of emotional conversation about the piece. I ask a lot of probing questions about the musical landscape that they want the piece to be in and what kind of journey they want the audience to go on. Um, I ask I ask questions to get the composer talking about the piece that they want to write, and I'm taking copious notes while doing this, because very often the composer will reveal to me the key to the poem. That they'll give me golden lines that I can actually use in the poem itself, or at
Huh.
least they give me the emotional landscape that the composer is after. And so when I write the text after that and then give it to the composer, very often it resonates with them. They're like, "Oh my God, this is exactly what I wanted." And well, it's because they gave me half the lines of the poem in that initial conversation. So that part is probably the most important part of the process for me, in gathering information. And then what I do with that is I sit with that and I think about a way in. Staring at the white page is the hardest part of any creative process. The blank canvas. Just making a mark on the paper. And so that first conversation that gives me an emotional arc and a soundscape, for the piece is often a really good way to get in. So once I have a way in and I know what this poem is about, then the next part of my process is to write kind of like a prose poem, just describing what the poem is going to do. Uh, this
Okay.
poem will communicate this in such and such a way, in such and such a form, um,
Almost like an outline.
almost like an outline or an abstract or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And then I begin to put words on the page, and a form will suggest itself. Sometimes the composer is very specific. I want it to be metrical and rhymed. It needs to be 4 stanzas or 3 stanzas, or I want it to be a haiku, or sky's the limit. Do whatever it is you want. Um, it all depends on the composer and on the commission. But once I have that way in and I begin to write words on the page and I know what it is I'm going to write, I know what human truth I'm going to communicate, and
Hmm.
basically the language I'm going to use to communicate that truth, then it becomes the craft of writing it, of finding the right words, it's like doing a Rubik's Cube, um, to just sort of find the right combinations of words. I also always chant through everything that I'm writing. I want to make sure that it sits well in the mouth, that it sings from a singer's point of view. I
Mm.
never want to give composers the wrong kind of vowels, so that they're forced to have sopranos and tenors up in a screechy part of their range on an E vowel. And I
Right.
really try to be sensitive to that. I try to be sensitive to not give S's or K's or T's as ending consonants of a line, because I've been in enough choir rehearsals to know how difficult it is for choirs to get, tss, 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 that sort of thing,
Uh-huh.
to get those cutoffs right.
Yeah.
And so as a singer, trying to write as singable texts as possible is also part of my process. Usually I'll write a composer about 150% of what they need, and then I send it to them. Sometimes I'll send them something like maybe the first stanza, and I like to know, hey, am I going in the right direction? Do you like where this is headed? Should I proceed, or is this not what you were after? And I get a variety of responses, from that process. But usually, especially if it's a composer I've never worked with before, I try to give him or her more than what they need, because I know that eventually there will be a scrubbing process and stanza 2 will get cut or collapsed or something like that.
Okay. So is there a threshold at which the composer's idea of what he or she wants you to write about? So thinking about like the content itself, like the this poem is about X, where that could be too specific.
Yeah.
Have you ever come across something like that where, hey, I want you to write a poem about how when a man loves a woman that, and it gets too specific.
I've had both ways. I've had not enough information given to me, and I've had too much freedom, which is scary.
Hmm.
And I've also had too much constriction, which is also scary. But I think my reputation is as the guy that can solve that problem. So
Mm.
if the composer really needs a piece about this and it has to do this in this order, and I've got this idea, or the musical material is already written, Not
Oh,
only does it
yeah,
have to do this, but it has to fit this musical material that I've already composed. I'm the guy apparently that does that.
right.
So,
Well,
oh,
that's
and
how.
I need it in Latin.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
That sort of thing.
yeah. Most of us know the story of sleep. That's how sleep essentially came
Exactly.
to be. Yeah.
Exactly. And I've done that same basic task many times for several different composers.
Okay.
They've written something in a different language, but they'd like to publish it in English, or it was a text they couldn't get rights to, or something.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting because I wonder sometimes I've written really nothing of in terms of poetry since high school
Yeah.
when I was like a super emo in love with the girl situation. She dumped me, and then my response was to write a whole book of
As
just
were we all. Yeah.
yes, of ridiculous poetry that I go back now. I still have the notebook. My wife found it and made fun of me for a solid week when she found it in an old box. But so I don't really have any experience from that standpoint.
Sure.
I just know what my brain tends to do when I'm asked to create something on the spot, and so
Yeah.
I'm trying to wrap my mind around how that must work. And I'm interested still too in the tie for you with the medieval history and all of
Yeah.
that. And I'm just so this will be a backtrack, and I apologize, but when you teach
Yeah.
in your university position, what
Yeah.
types of history courses do you teach?
I teach, we have a 3-semester world history survey course, and I teach all 3 semesters of that. So everything from cavemen to Chairman Mao and everything in between.
Okay.
So I do that routinely. My wheelhouse one is the ancient one that goes up to around 1200 AD. Um, but I've done the others as well.
Hmm.
So I always teach those survey courses, and then I have a rotating um, upper division course, mostly for majors, history majors. It's a 300 level course, and I do there's a course in ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt, and then I have a course in Greece, ancient Greece, one in Roman civilization,
Hmm.
and I teach medieval civilization. Um, and I because we're a small department and we all wear many hats, I teach Japanese civilization as well,
Mm,
as good a class that as a non-specialist can create.
right.
Um, I also teach a course in pirates, basically a focused history of the Caribbean from 1640 to 1720. Um, all my upper division classes have role playing or games or simulations or some sort of interesting D&D aspect of them.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so my medieval class, for example, I teach it as though it were a classroom in 1300.
Okay.
So I and the students wear our graduation robes for every single class all semester long. I've created a beautiful book, an illuminated manuscript, basically that's bound in oak and it's chained to a table in the library, and they all have to use that book. It's the only book for the class, and all 30 students have to share that single book. Um,
Wow.
things like that, and the students
That would have been a time period appropriate way to study.
well, yeah, of course. You books are expensive,
Right.
and unless you're the son of a duke or king or something, you can't afford a book of your own. And something like a sumptuously illustrated history of the world that would cost $80,000 in
Yeah.
1300, and so
Right.
we're all going to share the book. Um,
That's
the
interesting.
the students love that kind of stuff. Whether it's a board game, a strategy game that I've created, 6 semesters ago, or if it's a simulation of the Roman Senate, or this sort of medieval role play thing that we do. Students love that stuff.
So what while you were kind of in throughout going throughout your I guess preparation and education in the history realm of things, were you
Right.
keeping up along the way with the music history of the time? Was that always an interest for
Oh,
you?
yeah, that really was an interest. And one of my favorite classes in college was a music history class. And I took general Western music history, and then I took an upper division elective in the music of the classical period. No, I
Okay.
took a Baroque class and a classical class.
Okay.
Um, And I geeked out at the time doing an integrative kind of thing that integrated sculpture and music and language and literature and history. Um, and that was refreshing for the professor as well, to read something from a person from a different major, a different discipline. I remember writing a paper on the collaboration between Mozart and De Ponte. This was before, years before I ever met Eric, and here I am already fascinated by the lyricist composer connection. Um, I hadn't thought of that paper in a long, long time.
That's funny.
But yeah, so the seeds were there. They always were.
Yeah. Yeah. I wondered, I only went back down that road because I feel like a lot of the texts that I've come across of yours, as well as any music that I've come across, a few pieces, there is it is almost as if that kind of call to the ancient is always
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I like how you put that.
It's because it doesn't always sound ancient, like ancient music, but almost in every project I've come across, there's something about it that makes me think that this is not of this time.
Yeah, yeah. I've always been told that I was born out of time, that I'm a person from a different century, and you
Yeah.
can really see that in the kind of clothes that I like. I would love to bring back Edwardian and Victorian wear, or even earlier. Um, and in my language too, my inner voice is a kind of combination between Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart. So
Okay.
when I read in my own head, I'm English, and so there is automatically a kind of formality about my language, and my inner voice, my poetic voice, I think is rather English and rather formal. Um, and I read a lot of primary source stuff for my day job, um, and so I'm familiar with that kind of stuff. And I've read Tolkien year after year after year ever since I was 12 or 13 years
Oh
old,
yeah.
and so that language, I'm steeped in that language. I love when a composer asks me to write in that style. Ola Gjeilo asks me to write in that style a lot, and so I've
Hmm.
written kind of um, consciously old-fashioned um, poems for him.
Yeah.
Dreamweaver is one that comes to mind, where he specifically asked me to be very Anglo-Saxon about it, very Viking.
Now, do you think what must be Italian Silvestri
Uh-huh.
ancestors are rolling in their graves with all your
No,
their Anglophilic?
I don't think so. I mean, I've got a mom too, and my mom is the sort of Celtic melange.
Okay, all right,
Um, I did the DNA test, the ancestry test, and fully
right.
expecting it to be 50% Italian and the other 50% is just sort of a
Oh, it never
mixture
works
of
that
stuff.
way. It
Oh
never
no,
works that way.
I've
Yeah,
got Portuguese and Greek and French and all stuff, all kinds of stuff. So I think my dad's people must have been Roman soldiers who got around, or Napoleonic soldiers who settled in Italy, or whatever. So that I'm far less Italian than my name would suggest,
right.
which was
Yeah,
kind of a shock to me. But
yeah.
I love Italy, and I've been there a gajillion times, and I love knowing that I have people there. But where those people came from originally, I really don't know.
Right. Hey, are you familiar with another podcast called The History of the English, or The History of English?
No,
Oh, you would love it. You would love it. I think it's just called The History of English,
I'll check it
and
out.
it's brilliant. I listen. This is how nerdy I am. It takes you all the way back to the Indo-European root language,
Oh
which
wow!
is the language that basically all languages come
Right,
from,
right.
unless they're the Asian family languages. Um, and it's probably 300 episodes. I'm still like in episode 75, but
Oh my gosh,
that's what I listen to. That's what I listen to while I lift weights.
that's a deep dive.
Right. Yeah. And of course, all the other testosterone people at my gym are listening to hip hop. And I'm listening to why we have ing endings at the end of words. You know.
You're such a dork.
Yeah, it's super dorky. So yeah, I'm hopeless, and then I'll usually bring that stuff into my classroom. And do you guys know why the letter K is drawn the way it is? And I'll walk them through it, and they just don't care. But they don't care. But I'm fascinated. All right, so changing topics just a little bit.
Sure.
This is going to be a part of the show where um, I'm apologizing ahead of time, but we got to throw some chum in the water for the piranhas,
Okay.
and so I'm going to ask some Eric Whitacre questions.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Something annoying about Eric Whitacre. Go.
Wow. Eric lives a blessed life, and let me answer this way. Eric has the ability to make a decision. He just decides that he's going to do something. He makes that decision, and then boom, the universe says, ta-da, here is exactly what you wanted. I am a ruminator, a ponderer, a pearl clutcher. I never can make decisions. It takes me forever, and I've always been envious about him for that. So yeah, that annoys me. His confidence.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I feel like sometimes, in fact, that's something that my wife makes fun of me for. When I was working in church music, there would be this almost bi-weekly occurrence where I would procrastinate and forget to pick the anthem for Sunday
Yeah.
and just run up and grab something, and then the choir goes, "Oh, this is perfect." And she knows she knows that I didn't plan at all. And then, but people ferry me with
Right.
sprinkle me with
It was the
compliments.
Holy Spirit that chose that anthem.
Yes,
You know
right,
that.
exactly. Yes, exactly. So okay, so then that's good. So I can see that. When in those early years of your early collaborations,
Yeah.
when was it that I asked you earlier in the episode what it was that he saw in you?
Yeah.
When did you start to notice, okay, this guy's got a really, really interesting musical language to share with the world?
Well, I mean, I was lucky to have met him and gotten close to him during the year when he first began to compose music. His very first work is a piece called Go Lovely Rose.
Uh-huh.
And I was in the kind of pickup choir that sang through the premiere of that work. Or maybe not the premiere, but while he was working on it. And so what he would do is he would write a page of manuscript and then he would give it to us and we would assemble in wherever we could, usually the stairwell of the music building, or in somebody's apartment or whatever, and we would sing through. And so I remember looking at his manuscript and it was the first time I had ever met a composer or sung handwritten music that was fresh, fresh
Hmm.
off of the artist's pen, and singing the clusters and things like that in there, um, was fascinating to me. I had never sung any music like that. Paul Salomonovich liked Renaissance music, and every once in a while we had a kind of a dissonant suspension or something like that, and those were always the moments that I loved. But there wasn't a lot of modern stuff in his repertoire, especially at
Hmm.
that time in his career. Um, but yeah, so that's when I sort of got used to his style. Like, ooh, this guy has a different kind of musical language. And then he would geek out about stuff like that, and he would have us in this resonant space, like the stairwell, and he would say, okay, you sing this note. Oh, you sing this note, and then okay, you go up. He was experimenting. He was
Uh-huh.
playing with music.
Yeah.
I don't know that he could read music very well at that point even. But he was just exploring sound and what it could do. And
Mm.
he had fun with harmonics and stuff like that. And it was a fascinating thing to see.
So are you familiar with the phenomenon that became fashionable in the choral music world? I would say probably 7 or 8 years ago, where it was really popular to be sick of Eric's music.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that? And did you ever talk to him about that?
Yeah. We talk about it a lot. But mostly when we get together, we're just brothers,
Right.
and so we
Not
talk about
talking shop
each
all the
other's
time.
lives and stuff. I
Right.
mean, we always have a project we're working on or whatever, but um, yeah, we talk about reviews, for example, of a concert, and there's always somebody that hates him no matter what,
Hmm.
and there are people. I mean, what I see at an ACDA convention or at a on the virtual choir chat thing on Facebook or at any concert is people super love his music,
Yeah.
and And I think there are some people that just don't like that he's popular, he's successful, and therefore I'm going to hate him.
Yep.
So there's that. Okay. There's another thing too. Why is he popular and successful? Because he writes accessible, cinematic, emotional music that audiences love, right?
And that
so
singers love.
that singers love. I mean,
Yeah.
period. His
Yep.
music is gorgeous. Singers love it and audiences love it. Okay, therefore I'm going to hate him because I'm an academic composer and I write, blip blop music that nobody ever wants to perform and no one wants to hear it, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep. Yep.
I've been to concerts where it's like, oh my God. And so, and not that, I mean, I'm sure some of those folks love his music too, but and then there are people who are critics and they just need to find something to criticize because that's what they do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think
it just doesn't
go ahead.
bother either of us anymore. It bothers me a little more. Like I read the reviews to see if they said anything about the lyrics,
Right.
Silvestri's trite lyrics, strike again and blah, blah, blah. I'm always expecting something like that.
The word vomit from Charles Anthony Silvestri.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I have my theory about that. And the reason I asked about it, because of course I have a theory. So when I started hearing my colleagues talk about, all right, so I'll go back even further. I took over the program that I teach in now from who had to have been the biggest Eric Whitacre fan of all time. This woman programmed at least one of his pieces on every concert. Okay, so Carla, if you're out there listening, I love you, but let's not deny that you were the biggest Eric Whitacre fan. It was constantly Eric Whitacre, and there was a time, and this was probably early 2000s, when the choral repertoire landscape was Brahms or Eric Whitacre. It was like you did something from the classical canon. And then to throw something modern in, the thing to throw in was an Eric Whitacre piece. And so there was a saturation of the market for a good 7 or 8 or maybe 10 years where he was the one writing the new language. Right. And so the academics, like you mentioned, the academics in the choral professions started to just kind of be like, no, there's too much of the same stuff. Right. Which any composer, and that was the thing I always got frustrated with that criticism, was any composer writes with a language.
Yes.
The Brahms that you keep loving to program on every honor choir ever.
Yeah.
Also all sounds like Brahms.
Absolutely.
So why are we criticizing Eric Whitacre because it always sounds like Eric Whitacre? Like that's
know what? Eric is the total package. He's gorgeous. He's successful. He's talented. He's a great conductor. People love his music. People love him. He's charismatic. There's so much to hate there. And I just think some people just can't handle it. And I've been to enough concerts and I've spoken to enough people after concerts to know that music, choral music, and this is a lyricist talking, choral music touches people's spirits and their hearts in a way that other music doesn't, because it communicates text. So you have the heart of the poet and the heart of the composer crafting something together that's going to take an audience member on a journey, right? And it can be a smiler of a piece, it can be a tragic piece, it can be I never thought about it that way kind of piece. But no matter what, it's different than a string quartet, right? String quartet music is beautiful. String orchestra stuff is fantastic. Concert band, it's an amazing instrument. It's an amazing idiom. But there's something about choir that can bunker bust right into somebody's spirit. And so I'm very lucky as a poet to have custom made soundtracks for my poetry. So people consume and experience my words with Eric Whitacre and Dan Forrest and Andrea Ramsey and Tim Takash and Ola Gjeilo and Kim Arnesen soundtracks. I mean, how lucky am I that that's the case?
Yeah, and I think an important point too on this topic is that let me say it this way. if you are part of out there listening, if you're part of the Eric Whitacre's music and Tony's lyrics are cliche crowd, think about that. You might think that because you've been exposed to an art form for long periods of time, but the
Right.
students in your choir are all coming in fresh.
Right.
There is no cliche
Yeah.
for a 10th grade soprano because they don't know choral music unless you teach it to them.
Right.
And
Exactly.
the way I think of it is like, in fact, I'm planning on having my choir sing "Sleep" this year. I've done it. I've probably done it 5 times, either as a singer or as a conductor. And I think, well, I should.
Have me come. I'd love to visit.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great. And we're going to do it at the Kaufman Center, actually.
Oh wow.
Yeah, yeah. So, when I'm looking at the program for something like that, I think, well, maybe I shouldn't do "Sleep" because it's so overdone. Well, but then I always come back and think, well, but not for my kids.
Right.
They've never done it,
Right.
and frankly, they're not a choir nerd like I am. They're not plugged into all the YouTube videos that I
Right.
watch, and they're not
Right.
listening to the recordings that I watch, and they're not going to the
Right.
conventions that I go to. So for them, it's not cliche. And who am I programming for?
Right.
I'm programming for them. That
Right.
this is their education, and it's a great piece. So let's think of it that way. So I think
Yeah.
that's an important perspective. Like I understand my colleagues that kind of that are so saturated with a composer or with a genre of choral
Right.
music that they're ready to branch out. I
Right.
just think it's important for us to not shut off those opportunities for our kids.
No, and I totally agree. Whitaker has been described as a kind of gateway drug to get people hooked, to get kids hooked into choral music. And I
Yeah,
can't tell you how many times people come to me, and that young people come to me and say, "I'm a music education major because we sang Sleep in high school,
yeah.
and it changed my life." Or people that say, "I played Sleep for my mother as she was dying in hospice, and it made it changed the experience for our family."
Hmm.
That's a powerful thing. And to the people that say that his music is cliche, okay, you're right. In the 2000s, it was Cloudburst and Waternight and Sleep and Luke's over and over and over again. I get it. But have you listened to his oeuvre lately? When David heard Saint Chapelle, Deep
Oh,
Field,
Saint
you know,
Chapelle is
I mean,
stunning.
there and the new
Yes.
and our new one, Sacred Veil, which I'd love to talk about, is completely different. I mean, Eric has explored, and just even our collaborations have explored so many different styles. I think it's disingenuous to call his music cliche,
Hmm.
um, because it isn't. It's so patently not cliche.
Yeah, no, I
Um,
agree. I agree. I will hear, but again, I think what I'll remind everyone is I think is the at least my theory is why we started calling it cliche
yeah,
was because of when it came out,
right.
there was no competition.
Right.
The-
Nobody was doing anything like that.
Right. And there is more now. There are more voices out there
Sure.
in the modern choral landscape to make, I guess, a true landscape. Whereas before it was just this Eric Whitacre planet.
Yeah.
Everybody and when
But dare I say that we're experiencing a choral renaissance right now,
I
not only in
agree.
the number of choirs, but in the number of composers. Why? Because of Eric Whitacre.
Oh, I don't disagree at all. I think there needed to be a catalyst
Yeah.
for choral music to move out of the classical
Yep.
period, essentially,
Yep.
out of the 20th century, basically, and
Right.
some of the, like Schoenberg wasn't going to do it.
Right.
That was not the voice that was going to
Right.
make choral music. Nobody's going to come to you and say, "I played Schoenberg on my mother's deathbed,"
That's
and
right.
it's
It
or
hastened her death. Yeah.
right, or I did a 12-tone piece in high school, and now that's why I'm a choral music
Yeah.
educator. No
Yeah.
one's That's not going
No
to
one's going
be
to say that.
right. We did need, as a profession, we needed
Right.
that, and I think it's everything that's transpired since then of the voices expanding, and now there are more people and that are kind of getting a piece of that pie, so to
Right.
speak. I think that's a good thing, but I agree with you that Eric was a huge catalyst in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just my only My only annoyance with Eric Whitacre is that I'm pretty sure I caught him scoping out my wife at an ACDA convention during one of our concerts, but
Your wife's pretty hot, I gotta say.
yeah, no, I don't disagree. I don't disagree. But no, that was like, man, that was like 20 years ago. So I'm not worried about it. We
Oh,
did. You know what? Actually, that wasn't even an ACDA concert. That was a Kansas City chorale thing in New York City
oh,
years ago, back when we used to sing in that group. But yeah, that's it. I totally agree with you, and I think that it's a ultimately where I think it comes from is that it's like the whole hipster thing. You
yeah,
like choir directors want to talk about how much they think Eric Whitacre's music's cliche because it makes them seem like they know
right,
like the higher level stuff.
right, right,
And I'm like, come on. You either
yeah,
like the piece or you don't like the piece. It's
right.
it's okay. But yeah, I'm excited to do sleep, and I'll take you up on that. I think I'll just once we start rehearsing that, I'll let you know. And
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky enough to live close enough together that
right,
I can easily come and visit.
the performance is end of March, so really
Okay,
anytime in February and March
okay.
that you can get out
And
there. That
I really think it adds value. It's rare for a choir to invite the lyricist. There's a natural focus on the composer, and I get that.
hmm
Um, but I'm over here like, hello, I can add value too. And I think when I visit a choir and talk about the process, or talk about the genesis of that particular piece, uh, what it means to me or what it means to the singers, I think it adds a huge depth to the performance. And especially with something like Sleep that has so many layers of meaning and it has so much history,
hmm
as a piece and also for me as the writer.
Yeah, yeah, and anything that ties into that process of that piece being kind of in a lot of ways a Kickstarter for your career
Yeah,
too. That the
absolutely.
kids would love because I mean, of course, it makes me feel old that piece came out when I was like, maybe in college, and
Yeah.
and this would feel like a history lesson to them. And I'll just tap, smile and nod, and
Yeah.
but yeah, all right. So the rumor is changing topics again. The rumor is you're writing a book, or you have a book out.
I do have a book
Tell
out.
us, tell us about that.
The book is called A Silver Thread, and it is a retrospective of 20 years worth of poems that I've written for choral composers. Um, all the ones that have been published, and some that never saw the light of day, and new ones, plenty of new ones that I wrote just for the book as well. All lyric poetry, all designed, written to be sung. Um, and I arranged the book chronologically, so it starts with sleep and it ends with a brand new poem about sleep that I wrote. Um, so, if someone was interested in my career, in the development of my voice as a poet, in locating all the different things that they might have sung, um, in discovering new things that I had written that they hadn't heard about, maybe getting to know composers and their work that they hadn't heard from. There's so many different layers of coolness about this book. I'm very, very proud of it. It's published by GIA, and it's available on Amazon and where all fine books are sold.
So okay, so what if you explain this? I didn't understand it. I apologize. So to explain again, the the poems are designed to be sung,
Yes,
but
all the
but they
poems that
aren't.
I've written are all lyric poems. I've only
Oh,
ever written poems that are designed to be sung,
got it. So
rather
the
than
book.
poems that are just meant as poems.
Okay, so the book is kind of a collection of these.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
see. All right. So I misunderstood, thinking that a part of it was new stuff written for the book.
It is. There's lots of new stuff written for the book.
Oh,
Poems that I just sort of pretended that a composer asked me to write for
okay.
them.
Now I'm
And
with you.
so it's a poem that is written in the same way that I always write,
Got
but
it.
but no one's ever set those texts.
Okay. So could someone?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. And a
so
lot of the old texts are all available too. Somebody wants to take a crack at sleep, go for it.
okay. So yeah. All right. So like any other poetry book would be,
Exactly.
somebody
Exactly.
somebody could buy it and have some Silvestri poems, but they wouldn't have had to go through the call you ahead of time process.
Right. It's already
It's already
it's
there.
more the traditional model where the poem is already done,
Right.
and you find the music in it.
Yeah. That's interesting. But there are some, like you said, sleep is in there.
Right.
Are there any other, uh, I guess, more well-known already set texts that we
Oh
would find
yeah.
in there?
Yeah, Sleep and Luke's and all the ones that I wrote with Ola Gjeilo, Luminous Night of the Soul and Dreamweaver and Tundra, um, Across the Vast Eternal Sky, the great poems that I wrote for Dan Forrest. Um, one of my favorites that I've ever done is called Overhave, which tells the story of a Norwegian immigrant coming to the United States at the turn of the century. And he wrote just exquisite music for it. Um, there's longer works in there too. There's one called St. George and the Dragon, which I wrote for Tim Powell. And it's kind of an oratorio length work,
Wow.
retelling the story of St. George and the Dragon. Um, what else? Yeah, and then a whole bunch of poems that I wrote a long time ago for composers that never went anywhere.
Hmm.
The pieces never went anywhere; they never got written or premiered, and so I put them in there as well. And then I wrote about a dozen new poems um,
Very cool.
for it as well.
Is there illustration at all?
No, no illustration. The illustration on the cover was done by a student at Washburn, um, a a graphic designer, a digital artist student. He's also a history major as well, and so it's uh, a really cool landscape, a dark landscape that's on the
Yeah.
cover.
Well, that's really cool. Everyone should go check that out. And like I said earlier, and the listeners of this show are used to, if after we sign off, if you'll just send all the information people
Yeah,
would need to
sure.
find that, and I'll just put that in the show notes so that people can, as simple as click a link when they're listening to the show. That'd be
Sure.
awesome.
I do
Uh,
have a children's book version of Sleep as well,
oh, cool.
with illustrations by a Dutch artist. His name is Anne Horius, and that's from 2013. And he and I are currently working on a children's book version of Leonardo Dreams of His Flying Machine as well. That should be out early in 2020.
Mm. So if it's a children's book version of Sleep, does that mean it's kind of extended to create more of a story after the poem,
Yeah,
or?
it's no, it's just the poem,
Oh, okay.
but each line is on a whole page. So you
Ah.
have a painting, a double page spread painting
Hmm.
that illustrates one line from the poem.
Yeah, so if you want your child to be destined to grow up as a choir nerd, what you'll do is you'll go out and get
Exactly.
that children's book version of
Exactly.
Sleep. That's awesome. So I know you've. This will be kind of our. We'll finish on a lighthearted note
Okay.
as we go out here. You've been to lots of choir conventions. You've been to lots of
I
choir
have.
events with choir people.
Yeah.
What's the weirdest thing about choir people?
The weirdest thing about choir people. Wow.
Why are we bigger nerds than history professors?
That's a really hard question to answer. The thing that occurred to me is what choir people get to do is they get to breathe together. They that first at the beginning of a piece
Uh-huh.
when you're standing there with 60 people and you're all focused on that one thing. It's different than a sports team. It's different than than other collective exercises. I think there's something really super special about that, and the bond that they have with one another and with the music is very, very special. And you get that sense when you meet somebody in choir. And so when we meet choristers at an ACDA convention or something like that, um, there's a familiarity already, one singer to another.
Yeah.
We get it. We get why we do this. And as I said at the beginning of the program, I can't not be in a choir. Once you've been in a choir, you're hooked and you have to keep singing. And
Yeah.
it breaks my heart when I'm not singing. I
Hmm.
look forward to our weekly rehearsals and to the church service on Sunday. I'm in a church choir now. Um, I would really miss it, and I think I don't know that that's a geeky thing about choir people. Um,
No, it's but it's true. I always maintain that with all the talk about, I guess, in popular culture about, well, culture. and cultural appropriation and all of the different ways that we talk about
Yeah.
how we should be separated.
Yeah. Yeah.
In a lot of ways, I feel like choir is a culture, and there is a choral culture that
Yep.
transcends all of the other cultures that we might
Right.
identify with, so to speak.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think that's, yes, it is a nerdy thing because it does turn on like full force when we go to these conventions, and it's
Yeah.
like, you know,
AC, ACDA National is a carnival
yeah,
of all of that.
uh-huh,
I
yeah,
love them.
it's like we let our freak flag fly. um
And we can be our freaky selves because everybody
yeah,
else in the room loves it too. So
yeah, it's like a comic-con. It's
exactly.
but for choir nerds, it's
But
brilliant.
for
Yeah,
choirs.
yeah, absolutely. So at this point in the episode, I am jumping in to out of time interrupt because after we finished the official conversation the other night, we kept talking and we got to some really, really good advice that Tony has for choirs and for performers. So here's the bonus 3 minutes of my conversation with Tony.
Somebody in the audience needs to hear what you have to sing tonight in the concert,
Ah,
and you don't know what line that is or what piece it's going to be, or you don't know who that person is or what it is that they need.
mm-hmm,
But the attention to the craft of what you're doing, knowing what it is you're singing, because how many times are the singers like, I've never thought about this poem, I don't care what it is, or something in Latin that they have no connection to whatsoever. They
mm-hmm,
need to know what they're singing because there's something in that that's going to make the difference in someone's life. It could quite literally save someone's life.
yeah. That's great, and I that's actually almost verbatim to a annual lecture that I give my choirs. Um, it came up actually a couple of days ago in one of my class with my freshman girls. Are you familiar with a piece called "Music in My Mother's House"?
Uh-uh.
So it's a kind of a American folk genre style piece. It's SSAA, and I don't remember the name of the composer off the top of my head, which is horrible. But we're starting to learn it in my freshman women's choir, and the poem is almost verbatim my life story,
Wow.
including growing up with in a house with my mother who was a music teacher. My mother died young, and there's a verse in the final verse of the song is when my mother died and sang her last song, we sat in the living room singing all night long.
Huh.
We sang the hymns to send her home, and it goes on, and that literally happened. Like
Wow.
my mom died, and the next time we were together with her family, we sat up late with my grandmother playing the piano, singing hymns all night long. And of course, this was before I'd ever heard that. I was 18 years old, and then this piece comes out, and I'm sitting through it and conducting through it and listening through it and going, "This is
How'd you
literally."
get through it?
Well, I didn't. It's an extremely touching piece for me, and I shared that story with my girls and explained that what you just said is when we go on stage, you have no idea
Right.
who is sitting out there that needs to hear that song right now, and even if it's the goofy song on our program that just is that you can't see any value,
Right.
you don't know
Right.
if there's somebody who really needs to be taken out of their angst
Right.
right now with
Right.
something really, really goofy. And so what I tell them, and this is where, because I'm pretty intense as a teacher, is I said, you're not going to go on stage having decided ahead of time which are your favorite pieces, and you're going to
Right.
show them which are your favorite pieces, because how dare you
Right.
decide for
Right.
them what they should think is important on this program. And so, yeah, I totally agree with that sentiment, and I think it's a really important thing. And so it sounds like we're on the same page.
Yeah, I mean, I like to say too that they're angels in the Greek sense of the word. That they're message bearers, and they
Hmm.
don't even know what message it is that they're bearing or to whom.
Yeah,
But they have to carry that thing and carry it well, or else they won't be able to communicate that message to the person who really truly does need to hear it.
yeah, it's a really powerful thing, and you're doing some awesome work to help us do that. Well, thank you
I
so
love
much
it.
for this conversation and for your
Oh,
time.
it's been
Uh,
my pleasure.
and we'll want to make sure that we get as many folks to tune into this as possible and check out all of your your books that have come out, and of course, take a look out for the piece that you see that has a Silvestri text, because it's going to be well thought out and well put together, and we
Oh,
all
thank
love
you.
your work.
Thank you.
Well,
It's been a great joy for me to have had this as a thing that I do in my life, and all from just saying yes and taking a risk.
mm-hmm.
And so I would encourage anybody that has that creative spark to say yes and just do it.
Thank you as always for listening. I appreciate it when you stick around to the end of the episode to hear the final thoughts of the guests, and of the wrapping your mind fully into this topic, I think, is always an important thing, and such a beautiful thing about the podcast medium. You can set my episode to start while you're at the gym, and while you're doing dishes, and while you're doing all these other things. And if you don't get all the way through it, it saves where you are and you pick it back up. It's just such an awesome thing. To those of you watching on the YouTube channel, that channel is growing pretty steadily. So we got a lot of people watching over there now, which is awesome. Welcome. But all of you can help me a lot by, on whatever app or website you use, and you can find it on any podcast app, but hit a rating of some kind. That helps people see it. If you're really feeling saucy, leave some kind of comment, which means it could be, hey, good job, or why do you suck, or whatever it is. But any of that traffic helps me beat the algorithms without having to pay for a lot of advertising, which is always awesome. So help us out in that way if you can. And of course, if you find any episodes particularly meaningful, share them with your friends, send them out in an email, post them on Facebook. All of those things are awesome. And of course, other ways you can help are hit the 3, Graphite, Ryan Main, and Sight Reading Factory, and that helps them see that people are listening. So again, these are all networking things that matter a lot to the success long-term of a podcast. And finally, if you are really into what you're hearing here and you want to help this exist forever, hit the Patreon subscribe button, and that's patreon.com/choralosophy. You can sign up to be part of the inner circle there for $3 a month. There are some tiers above that, but for as little as $3 a month, you can get patron-only episodes. You can get any supplemental materials that I publish with the episodes above and beyond what's in the show notes. And we're doing some new things on there. We're going to do some Ask Me Anything episodes for patrons on the Patreon. We're also going to start teasing to the Patreon members which guests are going to be interviewed next, and letting Patreon members ask questions. So you could submit to me a question ahead of time. For example, if you get signed up for Patreon in the next week, before I get Dr. Quist on to talk about vowels, you could be submitting questions for her, which I read then while she's talking with me. So these are all opportunities to support the show and become more involved in the conversation. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.